Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into something you might not expect,
No.
running.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. We're using a podcast episode about IELTS speaking test questions as our starting point.
Interesting. So even if our listeners aren't planning on taking the IELTS,
Yeah,
there's still something here for them.
for sure, because it's really about how to talk about anything you're passionate about
Right.
in a way that's interesting and engaging and makes people want to listen.
I think what's so cool about this is that, we think about test questions as being kind of rigid.
Yeah.
Like there's only one right answer.
Yeah.
But this material shows how to bring your own personality and your own experiences into it.
Yeah. And it starts with a question that seems super basic. Do you like running? But the sample answers in this episode, they don't just stop at yes or no.
Right.
They actually launch into these little stories. Like one person talks about how they started running during the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
And another one talks about how they use running to clear their head after a stressful day.
It's like those little stories make the answers come alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone can say, yeah, I like running, but when you add a personal touch, it makes it relatable.
It's true. It's like you're inviting the listener into your world a little bit.
Exactly. And I think that's something we could all do more of, like really think about why we like the things we like.
Totally. Like giving people a reason to actually care about what you're saying. So let me ask you, how would you weave a story into your answer about running?
Well, I guess for me, running has always been about pushing myself,
Yeah.
you know? Like I was never really athletic as a kid.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So that feeling when I cross the finish line, even if it's just a small race, it's a reminder that I can do more than I think I can.
I love that. That's such a powerful way to think about it. And it makes me think about the next question in the episode. How often do you go running? They talk about being honest and reflective in your answer, even admitting those times when you might not run as much as you'd like to.
Yeah, I think that's so important because life happens, right?
Totally.
We get busy, work gets in the way, but it's about how you get back on track,
Yeah.
showing that commitment.
I love that. Like, it's okay to say, hey, I'm not perfect. Things don't always go according to plan.
Exactly.
But it's how you handle those challenges.
Right. It shows resilience.
And that applies to so much more than just running.
Oh, for sure. Whether it's your work, your relationships, anything.
Okay, so here's where things get really interesting. The episode asks, do many people in your country enjoy running? And they use the Mumbai Marathon as an example.
Oh, yeah.
And I gotta admit, I don't know much about it.
Well, the Mumbai Marathon is a fantastic example of how running is more than just a sport.
Okay.
It's become this huge cultural event with people coming from all over India and even other countries.
Wow. I never thought about it that way. But it makes sense,
Yeah.
When you think about that shared experience, the sense of community.
And it reflects the energy of Mumbai itself, this vibrant, exciting city.
So it's like running becomes part of the city's identity almost.
Exactly. And this speaks to a bigger trend we're seeing globally with running becoming so popular.
Right. It's not just about individual fitness anymore.
It's about social connections, building community, even supporting important causes through charity runs.
So powerful. So we've talked about personal stories, being honest in your answers,
Right.
and this amazing cultural aspect of running. Now let's get into the actual benefits.
Okay.
The episode asks, what are the benefits of running? I bet our listeners can already guess a few.
Oh, I'm sure they can.
Yeah,
Improved cardiovascular health, stronger bones and muscles, better sleep.
for sure. But what really struck me was how they went into the mental benefits as well. Like we all know exercise is good for stress, but they talked about the science behind it.
Right, how running releases endorphins.
Exactly. And those have mood-boosting effects.
Like a natural high.
And they also talked about how the repetitive motion of running can be almost meditative,
Yeah.
helping you clear your mind and process things.
And what's also great about running is that it's so accessible
Yes.
compared to other sports.
You don't need any fancy equipment or a gym membership. Just a good pair of shoes and you're good to go.
And you can do it anywhere, anytime.
Which brings us to the next question. Do you prefer running indoors or outdoors? And get this, the episode actually gives two different answers.
So that's interesting.
One person loves being outside in the fresh air.
Makes sense.
The other prefers the treadmill, especially when the weather's bad.
So it shows that there's no right or wrong answer.
Exactly. And what I liked was how both answers talked about being adaptable.
Okay.
Like even if you have a preference, you recognize the benefits of the other option.
It's about being flexible and making it work for you.
Right. It's like saying, hey, I'd rather be outside, but I'm not going to let a little rain stop me.
That's a great attitude to have.
And that applies to other areas of life too, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like if you're working on a project and things change suddenly.
It's going to be able to adapt.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about experiences. The episode asks, have you ever participated in a running event? And their example is a charity fun run.
Oh, cool.
What I love about this is that they don't just focus on the physical challenge.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about the emotional side of it.
Like what?
The feeling of accomplishment, the camaraderie among the runners, and the satisfaction of supporting a good cause.
Right. So it becomes about something bigger than just yourself.
Exactly. Yep. Okay, now here's something I was really excited about. The episode includes a whole role play section.
Oh, wow. So it's like a simulation of the actual speaking test.
Pretty much. And what's great is that it highlights communication skills that are useful even outside of a test setting.
Like what?
Well, for example, they talk about the importance of being fluent, providing specific details, and using the right vocabulary. So it's not just what you say, but how you say it.
Exactly. And I think fluency is so important for any kind of communication.
It's true. When someone speaks fluently, you're more likely to listen and pay attention. Right. It's like you're drawn in by their confidence.
Okay, so to wrap up this first part of our deep dive, we've talked about the importance of personal anecdotes, being honest and reflective in your answers, the surprising cultural connections to running, and some key communication skills that can help us in all areas of life.
And there's still so much more to explore.
I know, right? Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dig even deeper into these ideas and uncover some really fascinating insights. You know, I was just thinking about what you said earlier about the Mumbai Marathon and how it's become this huge cultural event.
Yeah.
It's not just a race, it's this whole experience.
Right. It's a spectacle, like a celebration.
And it made me wonder, what is it about these big running events that makes them so compelling? I mean, I like to go for a run, but a marathon, that's a whole other level.
I think it's a few things. First, you have the physical challenge,
Right.
like just the training and the willpower to actually finish something that long.
Yeah, it's a huge test of your endurance.
And then there's the mental side of it, too. Pushing past your limits, proving to yourself that you can do more than you thought.
Like a mental and physical challenge all rolled into one.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you have this incredible social aspect.
Right.
Thousands of people all working towards the same goal, supporting each other.
The energy must be amazing.
Oh, it is. The crowd, the other runners, it creates this incredible atmosphere.
And with events like the Mumbai Marathon, you also have that cultural element.
Right.
The way it connects to the city itself.
It becomes part of the city's story.
That's so cool. Speaking of stories, that reminds me of the role play section in the episode. They give you this scenario where they ask, why do you think running is such a popular activity?
Okay.
And the sample answer was so good.
What do they say?
Well, they talked about how accessible it is.
Right. You don't need a lot of equipment.
Exactly. And you can do it anywhere at any time.
So they basically explained why it's so appealing to so many people.
It was like they anticipated the listeners' questions and addressed them head on.
I see. So it's about understanding your audience,
Like you're having a conversation with them.
not just lecturing at them.
Exactly. And that makes such a difference.
Oh, for sure. It's way more engaging.
You know, another thing I noticed about the role play answers was their fluency.
Oh, yeah.
They spoke so smoothly and confidently, even when they were talking about complicated ideas.
Fluency is so important, but people often forget about it.
It's true. It can make or break a presentation or a conversation.
Think about it. When someone's hesitating and stumbling over their words,
Yeah.
you kind of tune them out. But a fluent speaker, they command your attention.
It's like they have this charisma.
Exactly. And fluency is something you can actually practice and get better at.
Like running. The more you do it, the better you get.
Exactly. And there are techniques you can use to help you too.
Oh, like what?
Well, the episode mentions using filler phrases like, that's an interesting question.
Okay.
Or let me think about that for a second.
So you have a moment to gather your thoughts.
Right. It can really help avoid those awkward silences.
So we've talked about what makes marathons so cool, the importance of knowing your audience and the power of fluency. What other communication gems can we find in this deep dive?
Well, one thing that often gets overlooked is using vivid language.
Okay.
The episode talks about using descriptive details and sensory imagery.
So instead of just saying, I like running outside.
Right. You could say something like, I love the feeling of the wind in my hair and the sun on my face as I run through the park.
Wow. That's so much more evocative. You can really picture it.
Exactly. It brings your words to life.
It's like you're painting a picture with your words.
And that's what we're all trying to do, right? As communicators. Make people feel something. make them see things in a new way.
Speaking of seeing things in a new way, I loved how the episode talked about the benefits of running.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't just list them off, they actually went into the why.
Like the science behind it.
Exactly, like how running releases endorphins.
Right, which can boost your mood,
And how that repetitive motion can be almost meditative.
helping you process your thoughts.
It's like running gives you this mental space to work through things.
And another thing they highlighted was how accessible running is.
Oh, yeah.
You don't need any special equipment or a gym membership.
Just a good pair of shoes and you're set.
It's a really democratic activity in that way.
And that's so important, especially these days when everything seems so expensive.
Right.
Running is like this free gift.
It is.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that you don't always need fancy things to be happy and healthy.
That's a great point. And I think those marathon events really embody that idea.
How so?
Well, it's just you and your body and the road.
Right.
But at the same time, there's this amazing sense of community and shared purpose.
It's like a microcosm of life in a way.
We're all on our own individual journeys, but we're in it together.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From personal stories and communication tips to the cultural impact of running and even some philosophical reflections.
It's amazing how much we've unpacked from just one episode about running.
I know, right? As we head into the final part of our conversation, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think the biggest one is this. Don't underestimate the power of simple topics. We often take things for granted, especially things that are familiar to us.
Like running. You put on your shoes, you go for a run. It can feel pretty routine.
But if we take the time to really examine those everyday activities,
Yeah.
to ask ourselves why and how and what does this mean, we can learn so much.
It's like we're seeing the world with fresh eyes.
Exactly. And you can apply that to anything.
I mean.
Well, the next time you're having a conversation or reading an article or even just observing something,
Yeah, okay.
ask yourself, what's beneath the surface? What's the deeper story here?
Ooh, I like that. So what other seemingly simple topics could we deep dive into and find hidden depths?
Oh, the possibilities are endless.
Like what?
We could talk about the history of everyday objects, the science behind our habits, the psychology of decision-making.
So many cool ideas, and those explorations can teach us so much about ourselves and the world around us.
And they can help us become better communicators, too.
Absolutely. So to our listeners out there,
Yes.
embrace your curiosity, ask questions, and never stop exploring.
Even the most familiar paths can lead to amazing discoveries.
If you're willing to take the deep dive, wow, it's like we started with a simple question about running and ended up talking about, like, the meaning of life.
I know, right? It's amazing how one idea can lead to another.
It's like that quote, the world is full of magic things patiently waiting for our senses to grow sharper.
I love that.
So for our listeners out there, whether they're runners or language learners or just curious people, what's the one thing we want them to take away from this whole deep dive?
That's a good question. I think it's the power of language.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we saw how even simple IELTS practice questions could lead to these really interesting conversations.
About motivation resilience, the human need for connection.
Exactly. And that's something we can all benefit from.
For sure. It's not just about passing a test, it's about how we think and talk about the world.
So the next time you're asked a question, whether it's in a job interview or just chatting with a friend, take a moment to really think about your answer. Don't just give a surface-level response.
Go deeper.
Right. Challenge yourself to articulate your thoughts clearly and with your own unique voice.
It's like we're encouraging our listeners to become more mindful communicators.
Exactly. And that can have such a positive impact on your life.
Your relationships, your career, everything.
It can help you navigate difficult situations with more confidence and clarity.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's remember what we've learned. Let's embrace our curiosity, ask those thought-provoking questions, and never stop exploring.
Because even the most ordinary topics can have extraordinary depths.
If we're willing to take the time to look.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into running and the art of communication.
We'll see you next time for another exciting exploration.